Hello, and thank you for taking the time to attend this presentation. I am Anna Offenwanger, and I will be presenting the work DataGarden, Formalizing Personal Sketches into Structured Visualization Templates on behalf of myself and my colleagues, Theophana Stendilis and Fanny Chevalier. Sketching is an effective means for communicating intent. Allow me to demonstrate. Let's say I want to make a visualization of my personal activity data. I want an organic, plant-like type graph. To clarify what I want, I can just sketch it out for you. I want branches that represent days and leaves that represent activities. I want the color of the leaf to represent the type of activity, and I want the position of the leaf to correspond to the time the activity took place. So you now know what I want for my visualization. If I were to give you my graph, as well as the explanation, and a set of data, you should now have everything that you need to create the final visualization for me. These components, the sketch and the explanation, are what we call a sketch-based template. The process of creating the template and applying data to it to create a visualization is what we call a sketch-based templating workflow. This kind of workflow is actually quite common already. Visualization designers will use sketches to clarify their intent before creating the visualization. Sketching also has the advantage that it's approachable for a general audience. You can create very unique personal visualizations through sketch-based interaction. However, it is difficult to iterate on these sketches, and manually drawing out data to be mapped is very tedious. Existing visualization systems just don't support this kind of workflow. We therefore built DataGarden to demonstrate how a system could support a sketch-based templating workflow. I will now run through a quick example of specifying a template in DataGarden. You start the same way that you would in a normal sketching workflow, drawing your visualization. You'll notice on the right here, as I draw my visualization, the system is trying to infer my intent with regards to the structure of the visualization. We designed DataGarden to support a specific subclass of visualizations, specifically hierarchical visualizations. In order to be able to do this semi-structured automated recognition and inference. In this visualization, there are 3 hierarchical levels. First, the parent branch, then the sub-branches, and finally the leaves, which are children of the sub-branches. Once we've drawn the visualization, we then need to specify the data mapping. For this, we have the Dimensions tab. This tab enables us to add dimensions and specify how they're connected to strokes. I start here by choosing the middle level of my hierarchy, the sub-branches, and binding each to a different day value. I then switch over to my color dimension. As soon as I choose color, the system is able to determine that I have 2 different colors and sort the strokes accordingly. I can then label my categories appropriately and also specify what the dimension represents. DataGarden also supports continuous visual channels and dimensions. Here, I choose the position channel, and the system displays its interpretation of the stroke's positions. I can specify my data range, and the system can use that to infer the values that are currently represented by the strokes. Once I have finished defining my data mapping, I can switch over to the table, which displays the data schema and values that the system has inferred from my sketch and mappings. DataGarden demonstrates a system that supports a sketch-based templating workflow, and there were a number of technical challenges and interaction challenges that we had to address in order to make this implementation. First, we needed to support the ability to structure sketches, since this is the structure that is used to conceptually link the visuals and the data. To keep the sketch-like workflow, we implemented some simple heuristics to infer the structural intent. In the example given in the previous video, the system was able to correctly infer the intended hierarchy. However, as glyphs and hierarchies become more complex, those relationships might be more difficult to infer. Here, there's ambiguity in which strokes are meant to be a single glyph, but I can specify it manually in the overview. I can also correct this parenting by specifying that the gnome is meant to be a child of the grassy track. To support machine-assisted data mapping, we need good mechanisms to support us in understanding what the machine is understanding and interpreting. For example, we use color highlighting and a mini representation of each gnome to help me understand the gnome's position mappings. We also need good mechanisms not only to make corrections, but also to specify values. Here, I meant there to be 3 different shapes and 3 different values, so I can specify that and directly manipulate the icons to indicate which gnome belongs to which value. Finally, to make this workflow complete, we need to be able to use the templates as templates, applying data and generating visualizations. It wasn't our goal when implementing DataGarden to create a robust solution to the generation problem, but we did want to demonstrate how the templates could be used, so we implemented an extremely naive algorithm for doing the generation. The way this algorithm works is that when you take your template and enter a new dataset, the system reviews the rows to see which values have been updated and will update the position, angle, color, etc. of the existing glyphs. It will then look for new rows and add additional glyphs simply by copying glyphs from the original template and updating their position, angle, etc. It works surprisingly well, both in relatively simple as well as in more complex templates. But there are definitely some limitations with this algorithm that we'll talk about in a minute. In order to evaluate DataGarden and the sketch-based templating workflow, we conducted a reproduction study, a freeform study, and created a gallery of visualizations. In the reproduction study, we asked 12 participants to produce a visualization based on the reference on the left, which was modified from the Dear Data visualization from earlier. Participants were not required to reproduce the visualization exactly, and we observed that the sketching workflow really supported participants in adding their own personal flair to the visualization task, such as the ones provided here by P1 and P4. Some participants, like P9, really got this templating concept, including only just enough glyphs to specify the visualization, whereas others, like P10, preferred to reproduce the entire visualization. In the freeform study, participants were asked to create a visualization for a dataset of their choice, and were also asked to try the template with a small dataset that we provided for them based on their schema. Generally, the participants really liked the workflow. E1 described it as the more fun way to specify a visualization. The workflow also helped participants think through and formalize their data structures. They mentioned points such as having to think through possible data values, considering how the extreme values would appear and things like that. However, you might notice there are some visual problems with the visualizations that were generated from these templates. DataGarden is mainly designed to support specifying explicit data mappings. This is necessary, and we as authors know it's necessary because the only way to know what the different visuals represent is to say so explicitly. But when I draw my visualization, there's a whole bunch of implicit constraints that I don't mention. I don't need to tell you that the sub-branches need to alternate sides of the main branch, or that if I add extra branches, you need to make the main branch bigger to make space, or that leaves should just not overlap. In this research, we aim to demonstrate the potential of the sketch-based workflow, and I would argue that we have not only shown what you can do with it, we have also demonstrated the challenges that still lie in the way of doing it well. How can we automatically recognize the implicit and static intents? And given that the automated systems will at some point fall short, how do we design tools to support the explicit specification and correction? Do we need fancy recognition and generation algorithms? Or can something simple like the heuristic that we implemented, along with a good correction interaction, do the trick? These are great avenues for future research in this area. I would like to take a final moment to thank my colleagues again who made this work possible. The application, as well as the visualizations from the gallery that you see here, are all available online. If you're interested in this work or in using DataGarden, please get in touch.